Hi everyone, we are back with another episode of our fascinating podcast allowing you to get to know people working behind the scenes of the crypto industry. Today, we catch up with another member of the Amun team, Jason Milligen. He does business development with a touch of anime and other nerdy pursuits. Welcome to the 51st episode of the Inside Crypto Podcast, the only bi-weekly podcast where you meet people and learn new things all in a single week. This episode was recorded on April 5th, 2022. Today we learn how quickly you can get into crypto in just a short amount of time. Jason has come to grips with many complicated issues in the space. Ranging from Rollups to Sekira NFTs, we talk about it all today. Before we get started, I would like to thank my employer Amun Tokens for making podcasts like this happen. Please don't forget to check out our website at tokens.amun.com. Thanks everyone for listening, and don't forget to tune in next week where we interview someone else in the cryptocurrency universe. Evening, morning, and afternoon, Amun token holders. Hope you had a great weekend and you're enjoying the spring weather if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. We are here with the latest episode of the Inside Crypto Show, interviews and discussion with regular people just like yourselves. Today we are joined by my coworker Jason Milligen, who joined the Tokens team and handles business development. I know very little about him, so this is the perfect venue for me to learn more about his background and for you listeners to get to know him as well. We have to do the usual disclaimer. Anything said by either Jason or myself does not constitute financial advice. Our opinions are our own and are not to be connected with our employer. Do your own research. Because it's just Jason on the show today, we can spend more time talking about his background and how he got into blockchain and crypto. Jason, thank you so much for your time today. Tell us about yourself.
Hey, Corinne, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be here. Let's see. The short version is I came into crypto, honestly, within the last year, around the same time I came into the company. And then my background pre-crypto was just in actually sales management and a little bit of TradFi.
Very cool. Like, how do you just get into crypto? Was it news? Was it like, did you start with Coinbase or what was that sort of starting memory?
Oh yeah. So in terms of the first investments, I was literally just opening a Coinbase account, and then I did those learn and earns. To be honest, that was my gateway drug. So Coinbase has one of those earn $3 worth of the graph if you watch these promo ads on how it works, and so I started watching all those things like Algorand, the graph, loop ring, whatever, and then from there.
I've got to say, like some of our listeners, they might have seen you. I remember because you've posted in Telegram before answering questions, and you're like very knowledgeable for just like having been in crypto a year. Like, how did you get your knowledge?
Yeah, so it's an interesting story. So funny enough, I've got a very, I don't want to say anal, but I'm very focused, let's call it. So if I feel like I don't know enough of something, I really try my best to catch up really quickly. Entering into this industry, I was like, okay, I know zero about crypto and I need to know. So my first kind of tack was jumping on Crypto Panic, where it's just basically a streaming aggregator of all crypto news. And I would just literally just click on every single link day by day, just, okay, what's going on minute to minute? Okay, cool. I don't know anything about Rollups, so let me read about that. So then I'd open up another tab on my window and start Google what is an optimistic rollup, and then come back to the aggregator and look at what's going on with Bitcoin. Okay, I don't know anything about Bitcoin. Shoot, open up a new tab. So I literally just started just sinking myself into anything and everything that I could find on crypto.
Very nice. I mean, that's like a freaking great personality trait to have, is like ability to sponge up so much information. And then from just listening to you talk when we have meetings and stuff, very knowledgeable. Going back, like you said, you went the Coinbase route, and a lot of people are not familiar with Coinbase Learn and Earn because I think it's only in certain countries. Before you starting up Coinbase, what was that thing? Was it just you seeing Bitcoin in the news? Was it Ethereum? What was that piece of knowledge that said, I got to open up Coinbase, I've got to...
Got you. Funny enough, I'll say the first thing that kind of really turned me on to crypto, I guess my first crypto memory actually has to do with my first days here at Amun Tokens Shares. So last year, I joined the company. It's post-quarantine, coming from a completely different industry. Truthfully, very little intention of getting deeply involved, or as deeply involved as I've gotten thus far. So 3 to 4 weeks in, I had a random interaction with Haney, who is one of the company co-founders, for those of you who don't know. And it turned into this lengthy conversation. We started talking about life, geopolitics, race relations, and the potential of crypto. So that, honestly, that one conversation, it ended up being like a 2.5 hour convo we had. It turned out to be this pivotal moment in my view of crypto. And up until that time, I knew terribly little about it. I left that conversation and was just like, okay, this is exciting. It's interesting. It's going to be life changing or world changing. I need to know more about it. And that's really honestly what started me reading about blockchain and crypto. And then before I said it, I was like, okay, F it. Let me buy $50 of Bitcoin and $50 of ETH.
Very cool. I love that story as well because you live in the States as well. I live in Taiwan, so I haven't had a chance to meet any of our coworkers yet in person. That's a great story as well. So let's dive into the questions because I saw your Twitter post this morning about the Sekira NFTs. I want to talk about those as well because that's really cool.
Yeah.
So Jason, an NBC poll that was like last week shows that 1 in 5 US adults have invested in crypto. In your opinion, what do you think that is?
Oh, that's an interesting stat. I think that it probably deserves some color because stats are just stats until you really dig into them, I think. So I think, if I'm correct anyway, by adult, polls generally count people over the age of 18 or 18 and older. So my opinion is I think that there's a huge number of young adults, like 18 to 30, that are looking to crypto the same way that like Gen Xers looked at traditional markets. Okay, this is a way I can save money, make a quick buck or invest to the future for those who are looking ahead. I think of course, crypto is also gaining like increasing attention from like the 40 plus year olders who are, I think, FOMOing in because they're seeing like their kids and young people making money. And then I think that's a direct result of the levels of which it's grabbed the attention of young folks. And then last but not least, I think it's just government and TradFi institutions they're starting to give looks now because they're like, oh shoot, we're about to become obsolete. We got to figure out what's going on and get in on this.
All right, a very good point. Your friends and family or friends of
Mm-hmm.
friends, like what is their experience or what is their interest? What's crypto like for the people around?
Yeah, it's funny. So in my circles, there are a lot of people who like know of crypto and are like they've read a little bit about crypto or they've watched a couple of YouTube videos, but they're like super hesitant. So it's actually jokes. Like in my circles, I've become like the champion to like, guy, you've got to look into this further. You need to like open an account, do something like get yourself some ETH, start stacking chips. So I've become in my circles the griot, if you will, of crypto. But yeah, but most of the folks I hang out with are super curious to dabble in themselves.
Okay, very cool. You're generally speaking, like what are people dabbling?
Really basic stuff. And by basic, I just mean like people know ETH, Ethereum. People are like the folks that I know that are investing actively. They're picking up ETH, picking up Bitcoin, obviously, and then looking at like the up and comers like the Matic, like Polygon, and Avalanche, and those kind of things. But yeah, it's a lot of Ethereum folks in my set.
And like you mentioned, a lot of younger folks. What do you think? Now going back to the NBC poll, what do you think younger folks are getting into cryptos? Is it just because the failing TradFi, failing governments? Is it that sort of stuff, or what is
Yeah.
the sort of impetus?
Yeah, I think outside of, I think it's probably a combination of factors. And like, I haven't taken my own polls, so I'm only, this is completely my own opinion. I think that the young generation and, my generation and younger, I should say, is, are very attached to our phones. We're attached to social media. We're attached to the internet. And I think pre smartphones, if you wanted to think about finances or whatever not, it was like reading the paper, going to a bank, getting a financial advisor. Like there was a very set route and a very limited route in which you could take to actually learn about how to secure your own future. I think that in the same way that IG, Facebook, all these other social media platforms like really blew up because of smartphones, I think the technology of smartphones, I think honestly has increased the accessibility of young people to be like, oh, there's this app in the App Store, Robinhood, or a Coinbase, or a KuCoin, or a whatever. And what is that? And I think some of it is inherent curiosity, and then some of it just turns out to be like, oh shoot, I can actual money. I can leave like this traditional system and actually still make some money. Oh wow. And I think that fascination is honestly what's drawn so many young people. And then just having it easily accessible in your pocket at any point of the day, I think is just, it's like almost a no-brainer for young folks, I think.
We have a very limited Coinbase out here in Taiwan. Is the
Yeah.
Coinbase app, like the mobile app, that like useful? Is it very easy to trade on your phone and buy and sell and stake?
It is, and granted, and I'm not going to say that I'm a huge proponent for Coinbase for my own reasons. But if you're a beginner and you don't know anything, Coinbase and Coinbase Pro and Gemini and Active Trader, which is Gemini's kind of answer to Coinbase Pro, they do make going from zero to something or zero to one really easy. So yeah, I think even if you were someone who doesn't know anything at all about crypto, you go on this really nice, colorful web page or browser or whatever, and it's like a plug and play. Like, oh, okay, got it. I just put in some money, and then I pick a thing that looks cute, and then I buy it. So I think they make it actually super easy.
Going back to the people aspect as well, because we spend a lot of time with it, like in like generally speaking, like my mom has some crypto now,
Yeah.
and she's a bit skeptical about it. Like what about your mom and the older people in your life? Are
Mm.
they like, Jason, what are you doing, this is a scam? Or are they like, okay, go ahead, you could?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So the older folks in my family, my mom knows exactly zero about crypto. Actually, no, I'll take that back. She's heard of Bitcoin. Like, actually, I saw her this past weekend, as a matter of fact, and she was like, "What is it you do again? What is it? What are you? What is it you're doing? What is this company?" And then she was like, as I'm explaining, she said, "Oh, so like Bitcoin." I was like, Okay. But I do think that with older people or whatever, there's a little bit of a gap in terms of understanding it. But I think that's not because it's so complex as much as it is technology. It's brand new. It's like going from the typewriter to the computer. People, I think, have their own kind of traditions that they might be stuck in, and getting them to change may take time.
Nice. Do you think your mom will ever say, hey son, can you help me buy some Ethereum? Or are you still waiting like a year or 2 years away from that?
I think what would happen for me, which is my only thought, is I think I would probably end up gifting her some, if you will. I would buy
Okay.
some for her and then let her kind of maybe see how it's appreciating, and then be like, oh, okay, there's some value in this, as opposed to waiting for her to do it herself, to be completely honest.
Okay, okay, that sounds like a great start. That's actually what I ended up doing as well. I can tell you it definitely works.
Nice.
Now you've had your year of experience, and I would say you've had 3 years of experience crammed into 1 year. In your experience so far, like what are some mistakes you've made? And listeners to the podcast know, like I've made tons of mistakes. Like one I get made the fun most of is I sent Axie to a wrong place and it's stuck, and because I was supposed to send it to the runner wallet, I sent it to another wallet, and that is my stupid mistake. What are some mistakes you've made so that people can learn from like my mistake and your mistake?
Yeah, so it's funny. And so in terms of mistakes, the first thing I'll say is I've probably been a bit luckier than some, in that since I've gotten into the space, like legitimately, I've had some solid mentors who, like, before I even put penny one into the market, gave me like a good primer on, hey, do's and don'ts, don't do this, don't do that. So I was a little bit luckier in that sense. And then that combined with the fact that I did have some prior TradFi experience, and I'm a super believer in the whole do your own research adage. I've managed to avoid some of the bigger, more disastrous errors. I think that if I did have to say a couple of things that stick out to me in terms of like where I've been like, oops, I think there's so many good projects out there that I spent a lot of my early days just like spreading my assets way thinner than I should have for the time, rather than focusing on like just a few really strong projects and like building my bags and looking at like maybe like 3 to 5 things that I really believe in. I was like, oh my God, here's another new thing and another. And so let me put in XYZ amount of money in like these 30 projects. And then I'm wondering, like, oh man, why are my pockets still so empty? I don't understand. As opposed to focusing in. I think the other thing, honestly, has been as I've started diving into the NFT space, which is markedly different than, or it's nuanced. It's a very nuanced sphere of the crypto space. I've been like, oh wow, I like this project because the art's really cool. And then it tanks because my personal opinion about what I think is cool has no relevance to what the masses may be interested in at the time, or whatever the case may be. So I've certainly lost out a bit on putting my funds behind like a project that maybe, had I really looked into it, I would have seen that like, oh, it's smoke and mirrors, and it's not. This is just a rug that's waiting to happen.
Very good advice. Like some of the things you mentioned, like oh yeah, I've done the same thing of spreading things out all over the place. I'm like, okay, and this is
Yeah.
not doing me any good, and I should have really focused in. And for the NFT stuff, we're going to get into that
Oh yeah.
in a few minutes later, because you've got some interesting stuff, not to mention your profile picture as well, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. At the moment, like everyone has their favorite sort of protocol. Our coworker Ryan is a big Terra person. Tyler, of course, is a big Polygon person coming from QuickSwap. What is your go-to protocol? Mine is Ethereum, because that's what got me into crypto as a miner. What's
Nice.
your protocol at the moment?
So not to piggyback on you here, but I would honestly say that Ethereum is definitely, I think, like my overarching, that's like my umbrella protocol. I think that no matter which way we slice it and however the market moves, I think Ethereum is like the monster here, and monster in a good way. It's got the biggest potential. It's got so many amazing things, coming down the pipeline, as well as it's the platform that has basically all most of the projects built on it at this point. Now, I am going to just sidebar that and say that I am also a huge fan of Anchor Protocol, and this is as a saving strategy. And this is again my own opinion. It is what it is. I think that, and for people who may not know, obviously Anchor, it's essentially like a decentralized savings protocol. They do like low volatile yields. It's built on Terra using Terra stablecoin deposits, and that basically diversifies that stream of staking rewards and proof of stake blockchains, etc. So it basically gives you a really nice return on anything you're depositing, on your UST that you deposit into there. So I think as a saving strategy, that's a really awesome thing for me. And then, like I said, otherwise Ethereum, and then ZK rollups, then the ZK rollup platforms, like those are like really interesting to me. I spent a lot of time like reading on that technology and how they're like improving scalability and decentralization and solving two of the three parts of the blockchain trilemma, if you will.
What's your favorite roll up at the moment, or what's the thing you're most excited about?
So if I had to say, if I had to like choose one, I'd probably say CK Sync is actually super interesting. Loopring was the first one that I looked at, but I would say between ZK Sync and the more I look at NFTs, or I'm getting into the NFT space, Immutable X are probably like the two that I would look to now and be like super exciting in terms of how they're working.
I mean, we've talked about ZK Sync and Loopring on the podcast because we have our DFI product as well, and Loopring is one of the constituents. For people who don't know, what is a roll up, in your opinion?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, it is a smart contract, and they bundle up hundreds of transfers off chains, basically relieving some of the congestion and stress that's happening on the base layer. And then it generates a cryptographic proof, pushes them back to the L1, and then it gets mass approved. And essentially, the whole purpose of doing that is basically, like I said, to remove some of the congestion that's happening on the base layer, and then it improves the speed of transaction approvals by, like, I don't know, to the nth degree.
Very nice. And I love that. That's a really quick, really easy sort of description. I might actually cut that out and make that into a separate clip. So, Jason, like one of the big things at Amun, at a lot of different crypto companies trying to figure out now how to get John Doe and Jane Doe off the street to say, oh my God, I need to think about crypto. What do you think Amun should be doing, or people should be doing, or crypto people should be doing to bring people into
I think honestly, it's a tough question, because I think the best way to really bring people or encourage people to join the space is partially with improving on-chain security. Obviously, we want to keep the decentralized part of DeFi, right? That's the whole premise of DeFi, is to distribute power, if you will, among all the constituent parts of the ecosystem. But I think that we won't really honestly see like a true mass adoption until we do find a provably lasting and legit like security measures to improve confidence from all the people who are now like the detractors, and whether that's government entities or mom and pop who's just like, I don't trust it, I just want to give my money to Bank of America. Otherwise, I think honestly it's a matter of time. I think we tapped around it a little bit, we've got more and more young folks adopting. And I think that trend is only going to increase over the months and years. And while we don't like to make a big thing of this, but older folks, they, pass on, however you want to look at it. So I think that some measure of it is going to just be a matter of time.
Okay. Yes. And you made like a great point about younger folk, and especially about security as well, because I get messages from family members around the world. Oh my God, Axie got hacked for 625 million. Are you sure you want to work in crypto? I'm like, yes, I'm so sure. This is not going to be the first hack or the last hack. Roland on the data team, he was on the very early episode of the podcast. He was like, the banks had hundreds of years of history where lots of bad things happened. And people are criticizing crypto because in the last 10 years, billions of dollars have been hacked. Crypto's come so far, so fast. And you still, like you said, security is going to be an issue. And I think we'll get there eventually.
I was just gonna say, and to be fair, I agree. It's interesting. I think people's hindsight's 2020, but also memory is super short, right? Because if you think the 80s, look at like Black Monday, like we have so many examples of where like traditional markets failed because of whether it was between Ponzi's or market manipulation or hacking, like different insider trading, things that happened which wiped out people's investments, which I think it's taken decades for that to get managed better. And we're still not seeing complete management in traditional markets. The housing market, same thing, right? The housing market's had booms and it's had strange near collapses. I think that with technology, we're seeing decades worth of mistakes happening inside of months, so, or weeks sometimes. So it may seem scary if you have no understanding, but I think if you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, it's just the growing pains of any new market or any emerging market. And so, yeah.
The perception is that there is no security there, and that is valid in a sense, but on a personal level for retail people, right? You have your wallet, you have your 12-word key phrase, or 18, or depending what network you use, and that's
Mhm.
pretty hard to hack. And then you have options of security keys as well. If you're on a centralized exchange, if that key is not in there, nobody is getting to use your account at all. And so there are multiple levels of security where your funds are pretty safe. Hacking a 12-word security phrase for somebody's MetaMask wallet is pretty difficult, even with the best hardware available. So it's education, it's time. I think there are a lot of factors. Before we get talking about NFTs, I wanted to ask you tips for people getting into crypto. You mentioned Coinbase, you mentioned doing your own research as well.
Mhm.
You mentioned time as a factor. Do you have any other tips for people just getting into the space, people who just buying their first hundredth of a Bitcoin or one Bitcoin if they're really rich?
There's a saying that I think it actually might have originated in the military, but like I've heard it in like martial arts circles too, where they say slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And I think that that's it. Some people don't get it. And even the first time I heard it, I was like, that doesn't make sense if you're slow. But when you think about it, what happens when you slow down is you take the time to actually calculate your moves. And the more you're able to calculate your moves, the overall smoother you become. And then the smoother you become, the faster you can then think and process and react, which like it creates this everlasting circle of like the slower I move, the smoother I move, the smoother I move, the faster I'm able to react. And then if you end up over time turning faster. I think that the way that applies to crypto and and beginners or people who are in the markets for a while is slow down. Don't feel as though, oh my God, I'm missing out on everything and I've got to FOMO into 20 different things because if I don't, then I'm going to miss out on the next big thing. Slow down, take a breath, like really look into what it is that you're about to drop your 10, 50, 100,000, whatever it is, dollars into, and then just think about it for a sec. And then before you pull the trigger on a project or before you pull the trigger on sending in your money into the blockchain, I think that's the best way. But at least you can mitigate your initial losses, I think, just by slowing down.
Wow, dude, like you are like a vault of freaking wisdom. I gotta say that much. That is just perfect. I'm gonna steal that and use that for our community as well. And whenever I get to talk about crypto, now this is the part I'm really excited about because when I saw your Twitter this morning, Sekira NFTs, I'll have the links for everything that like Jason's talked about, Anchor, Coinbase, all that stuff in the show notes. Tell me why I've got into NFTs since last year or maybe beginning of last year. Why did you buy this? What's so cool about it? For me, like you mentioned, people who just buy NFTs just because the art looks good, and I'm just literally one of those people. Why did you purchase this NFT?
Yeah, sure. So it's funny, right? Again, this is one of those things where I held back on it and looked on it for a bit. So like I jumped into the NFT space super recently. I'd say probably within the start of the year, so like almost a couple of months, and I made certainly some blunders. I love anime, so like I jumped on the Azuki knockoffs and that kind of thing, which I was like, oh wow, this is I got rugged like twice super early on, whatever. Oh yeah, it was great. It was amazing. It was a great rush, I tell you. But so again slowed down. I was like, okay, even if I realized that like me trying to jump full bore into a space that I didn't really understand very well doesn't make any sense. So I was like, all right, let me pull back a little bit and actually scoping things out. So I came across Sekira, and again, not trying to plug it to anybody. I do not have any agreements with the with the project. They actually had a really rocky start. They had some changes in like their devs did some things like shifted around, but it's basically this NFT collection. It's anime, but it's essentially a collection of 3,000 or 3,200 something female characters. It's inspired by traditional Japanese society, if you will, or old school Japan. So it's centered around the beauty of the quintessential woman, if you will. So they generated this NFT collection, different looks, different features or whatever not, but the art is just super, super clean, super crisp. I jumped in their Discord before I ever got any of their products, and the Discord community is super cool, super healthy. And then just looking at some of their stats, I was like, okay, this actually does have solid potential to appreciate and value. So I was like, all right, let me go ahead and throw some money in this.
Very nice. Since you're pretty recent in the space as well, so I had
Hmm.
a bunch of questions because I've done this. Like I joined a project called Cosmic Condos, and they've
Okay.
literally had the same thing you just talked about. It was like some of the devs, okay, we've got issues, so we're changing devs, and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
But like projects can recover from that kind of stuff. Do you factor in utility like recently when you're getting into NFTs? Because I did look at the roadmap for this. Is they do have utility down the line? Is
Yeah.
it just art for you?
It's twofold. So I have two different sides to like what I get interested in terms of NFTs, I think. So some of it is art and whether or not I can appreciate it, whether or not it's like aesthetically pleasing to me or if I can just find like the beauty in it. So like with the Sekira, it's incredibly visually pleasing to me. Like I think it's dope. I think it's beautiful. I go with the three strategy or the strategy of three, which is you buy a minimal of three of something so that you can keep one, sell one, and tease the other. So I use that strategy in general. And you had mentioned like my profile picture, kind of a similar thing where I'm like, that was a piece of actual art that got converted into an NFT by this really cool artist out in Southeast Asia, Giant Fish, which I thought the concept was really cool. The depiction that he made was really cool. So I was like, all right, bet I want this. But then on the other side, I do look at utility. It so happens that Secure as a project does have in their roadmap the idea of future utility. There are other projects that I have looked at or am looking at and maybe put something into. Chibi Labs, they've got like a whole universe of projects that have current and future utility. They're building out space in the metaverse, have active staking. So like I think there's a good middle ground between finding things that are like super visually pleasing and then things that you just get because you're like, okay, I can see where this is going to be valuable down the line because of whatever their intentions are on chain.
And you've made some really good points, not just about Secure, but about NFTs in general.
Yeah.
Like we've talked about NFTs on the show, I think probably the last few episodes. What are your thoughts in general about NFTs? Of course, we both love them. We're in
Yeah.
crypto. Do you think more people are going to adopt them? Where do you think they're going? Are we going to the NFT membership club stuff? Are we going to the music side? Are we doing movies and stuff on NFTs?
Yeah, so it's funny, right? This is actually a conversation that I've had a couple of times recently because more often than not, actually, I've had conversations where I find myself. And so to be clear, like I said, I really only started really believing and looking at NFTs as like a viable section of the space this year, like literally January. Like I was like, okay, people have been talking about this for a minute. Let me give this a look. And pre-January or whatever, I was like, get out of here. Like this is like some flash in the pan. I don't even understand why people are talking about profile pictures and like whatever. But I found myself more and more becoming like a defender of the NFT culture because I think that realistically, people who will say, oh, it's just the JPEG that you can copy paste or this and the third. I'm like, okay, why is it worth so much? I'm like, all right, look, if I had a LeBron James jersey that he signs, right? Like I can frame that and that's going to be worth money. I know it's worth money and I know it's mine. Now, someone down the street could go to a sporting goods store, buy a jersey, fake sign LeBron's name and be like, I've got one too. And you could do that 100,000 times. But those copies will never have the same value as that one actual LeBron James jersey that had signed by LeBron in whatever the heck year. So I think there's the one side of the NFTs where I think that just having ownership of whatever it is, whether it's art, music, or whatever the actual product is, I think is something of inherent value. The future of NFTs, I think, is actually more exciting than just PFPs and whatnot, because I think that when you start talking about tokenizing individual asset and they can't be mutated, you're looking at housing deeds, like things that are actually used in the real world. You're talking about like other contracts, you're talking about financial instruments, you're talking about sporting events, music, as you already mentioned. There's so many different applications, I think, where NFTs, there's a utility for NFTs that we've just started scratching the surface. And I think it's going to become a super profound and super huge part of the industry given time.
I totally agree with you. And I think that is like the perfect soundbite to end today's show off on. And Jason, I have to ask, and I ask this on every show, is do you have any like last words of advice or anything you want to leave our listeners?
Last advice. In as much as I can give advice about things, I would definitely say I think that if you're listening to this, you're probably already at least curious about crypto and maybe NFTs or whatever the case is, but certainly the crypto space, or maybe you're a full on degen. I think that the best piece of advice I could give is stay the course because even with the ups and downs and the crazy kind of like ride that we're on right now, the trend is up only, man. This space is it really is the future. And I think that having faith and finding the projects you believe in addition to looking for financial gain, which I think is never a bad thing, finding a few projects that you actually believe in and looking into them, digging through their roadmaps, seeing where they're going, I think that's going to be super beneficial for anyone at any phase of the game. Yeah, on their journey.
That is a great way to end today's show. And man, I'm still so impressed. And I wish we had gotten time to talk more because you have so much knowledge that I think
Yeah,
I could,
thanks, man.
in such a short time, that I could just sponge off. But I think our listeners will definitely enjoy this. People who are listening to this on YouTube as well. Jason, for socials, are you okay with people following you on Twitter, or me sharing your Twitter in the show notes?
Yeah, yeah, sure. You can share my Twitter. I have a solid mix of crypto and like NFT stuff, and then just random like I ate a pizza. But yeah. I'm sure happy to share my socials. Yeah.
Cool, cool. Okay, cool. Then I will include your Twitter there, and everyone, so you can follow Jason on Twitter. I've started following him recently as well, but he's got some cool art. I haven't seen the pizza pics yet though, but I'm gonna look for those. And thank you very much. And hopefully we can get Jason on maybe in about 6 months' time. Maybe you can tell us how he's feeling about NFTs and crypto and a bunch of other stuff. We'll do a catch-up episode after, we could say, 7 months in NFTs and what it's been like for Jason. Cool, Jason. Thank you very much for your time, and I will definitely see you on again in about another 6 months.
Awesome. Hopefully, I'll have way fatter bags, and we'll have a wholly different conversation.
I'm going to keep my fingers crossed for that. Fatter bags for Jason. Pray to whatever gods you believe in.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing today. All right. Take
Thanks,
care,
man.
everyone. That's all we have time for today, folks. I and everyone at Amun really appreciate you stopping by. Please don't forget to follow us on social media, Twitter at Amun, A-M-U-N, Telegram at Amun Tokens, or stop by our Discord and join in the conversation. If you are Chinese speaking, we now have a Telegram group just for you, Amun Tokens CN. We are also on Reddit at r/Amun Tokens. Amun also puts out a monthly newsletter with the latest insights on the crypto market. You can sign up for that wonderful piece of writing on the bottom of our homepage. If you're looking for a place to call home, there's nothing better than the Amun community. Looking forward to chatting with you, and see you guys next time.